If I can believe in Spider-Boy, you can too. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order that I placed with Midtown Comics. And even saying the name Midtown Comics, it stirs some emotions or nausea inside of me. But there are times where I kind of have to make a deal with them, and it usually ends up either with a sale, or for some reason they've got a book, or a few books in this case, available through their online store where I just can't find the books anywhere else. And it's interesting to me because there is a theory where if a book gets hot, a character gets hot, a specific issue is hard to find, difficult to track down, it makes sense if people are speculating on it, the value is increasing and so forth. But what I find interesting is when there is a book that is talked about, perceived to be hot or scarce, but you can find these books everywhere. And to me, this is the case of the first appearance of Spider-Boy, specifically Spider-Man 7, the Humberto Ramos spoiler variant, where Spider-Boy is on the cover. And if you are interested in this character, this is the cover essentially that you're going to want. There's a lot of second prints, origins. Now he's getting his own series. There's a lot of books now with this character on the cover, front and center, or in the story. But this one book is the one I think that everyone is considering going after, just because it's his first appearance and story, but first cover as part of the spoiler variant. Now, I had pre-ordered this issue before it came out, and I think I picked up one copy and really felt like I was good. I was good there. And recently went to Midtown and saw that they had Spider-Man number 7, specifically the Ramos spoiler variant, available. So I picked it up. I also picked up Void Rivals number 1. This was a story that was tied in to a greater shared universe and kind of flew under the radar. No one really knew what it was about. It was not labeled or branded with any other popular universe, comic book, or toy line. Trying not to spoil it if you haven't read it yet. But to me, these were some examples of recently released books that I think the community had deemed interesting, worthy of speculating on, talking about, showing up on lists and so forth. But I can find these books online. The Void Rivals books were cover price. This isn't a huge order or anything, but I can go on there today and still pick up these same books, and yet there is this perception of like, oh, cool books, those are hard to find, or they're going up in value. So I want to show you these books that I got. Like I said, it's not a big order. I'll show you what I paid for them and then kind of compare to what's happening in the market in terms of fair market value for the books raw. And there is some information and data related to graded copies of these books, so I'll compare those to what I paid for them. So let me open up this order from Midtown and show you the books that I picked up. All right, here it is. Here's the order from Midtown, not sent in their really awesome, crazy box with the newspaper. This is more of like a Uline style or Gemini mailer. Looks to be kind of their own custom box, but hopefully the books are well packed inside. Only one way to find out, and that's to get this opened up. All right, so there you have it. That was no padding, no nothing, no extra like reinforcement, just a cardboard box with the comics wrapped in a paper bag. So they're really hoping that their flimsy bag and boards are protecting these books. So I kind of spoiled what's in here, so let's go over the books. And strong start, Midtown. They do this from time to time, putting the books in backwards. And let's see what we got here. And this is Void Rivals, number 1. This is the book I just mentioned, flew under the radar, and then the people that did pick it up and read it started to talk about how good the story was, written by Robert Kirkman. I think that was the first tip-off that I probably should have been more interested in checking this out just because of Kirkman's reputation, but then also because it ties into at least one universe, if not two. It remains to be seen, depending on how the story develops. At least one or two universes that I am very, very much interested in and have been interested in my entire comic book collecting life. So I'm interested to read this and wanted to pick up cover A. I can already tell, though, it's got a little Midtown fun here on the bottom. Probably could be pressed. I would hope so, but it's almost like you got the 3 finger bends right there. Somebody took maybe all 3 fingers and jammed them into the bag and board. I have no idea, but that's unfortunate. So it will need a press. So this one probably by itself is somewhere around like a 9.2 just because of that damage there. The rest of these should be the same. I got, I believe, 3 copies of Void Rivals #1. Let's see if this one's in better condition. Looks to be the same problem, just in a different spot right here on the edge. It's damaged there. So this one probably a 9.4. And if it didn't have it, it's a very, very clean copy. Otherwise, corners are nice and sharp. Yeah, it's a good looking book. It's just, it has these odd bends here that was either damaged copies that they received, or like I said, as the books were being jammed into the bag, and they were further damaged. And this should be the last copy, I think, of cover A. Now let's take a look at this one. Yeah, same thing. This one also kind of all over the place, but light finger bends here and here. Really too bad. Strong copies otherwise, but unfortunately would all need to go through at least a quick press to get that out. So now, thanks to Midtown, they've created some extra work for me, but the books were technically available. So available they were, just with damage. I also, just to be different, wanted to go ahead and pick up a copy of cover B. And let's see if this is any better. See any finger bends on the bottom or the top. So this looks to be in better shape. Just some light whitening here on the corner, unfortunately, right in there. Probably have to give this one a 9.6, but it doesn't look to be too bad. So I'll probably pick maybe the worst of the 3, and that'll be my reader copy. So that's too bad they all have those finger bends. Let's take a look at probably the main reason I put this order together, and this is Spider-Man #7, the first appearance of Spider-Boy, and first cover. So it's got that going for it, where it's kind of rare in this day and age to have a first appearance where the character is on the cover. Typically, if you see kind of like a spoiler variant in pre-order, it's probably worth at least picking one up. That's what I did when I pre-ordered. I picked one up, and lo and behold, the spoiler variant ended up being currently a significant character. We'll see how long that lasts, but looks to be okay. I would say just at first glance, just some minor corner wear or bindery tearing on both ends, and just a slight, somewhere in there was just a slight spine tick. I don't think it broke color, so 9.6, borderline 9.8, not too bad on that one. I ended up getting 4 copies of this. Now, the only catch with the price on this, this one looks really strong. This one looks like a 9.8. Could maybe argue to give it a quick press. I don't think there's stacking creases on these. Could just be an illusion. I think it's just the Marvel paper, just some general wrinkling. You see as I move the light back and forth, it's just some slight warping of the page. It kind of gives the illusion that it's creased, but it's not. It's fine to send in as is. This one is probably a 9.8 candidate by itself. So that's good news that I at least got that. But I didn't pay cover price for these. And I was okay with that. What I ended up doing, as I look at the last couple of copies here very quickly, just to look at the condition, what I ended up doing was running the analysis and the numbers. If I were to purchase this at the price that I paid, this one looks pretty good too, probably a 9.8 candidate. Is it still worthwhile? And what I found was the graded copies, and there were many of them, but they were selling. There were actual receipts for sold listings of Spider-Man 7, this specific variant, in a CGC 9.8. So it just became a numbers game where I was like, well, what is kind of my max price? If you follow me on Instagram and I put the sort of suggested price, that's the price where you don't want to go over that, because then the 9.4, 9.6, 9.8 values, it just you're starting to introduce risk if you go over that number. And so I wanted to see if the price that I paid for this would introduce some risk, or if I was still in the clear if these were 9.8s. And that one had just a little bit of a fold over on the corner, but seems to be okay. This one also looks to be a 9.8. So I'm not sure what was up with those Void Rivals, but very, very happy. I would say probably 3 out of these 4 Spider-Man 7s are 9.8s, and I think that first one maybe is a 9.6. I'd have to look at it one last time before I give it an official grading. But it's unfortunate the Void Rivals all had those finger bends at the bottom, but luckily the Spider-Man number 7, the first appearance of Spider-Boy, all looks good. So let me show you what I was talking about. I'll show you what I paid for these. I'll show you what kind of was the breaking point for Spider-Man 7 in terms of the book raw, and what I paid for it, and how it still made sense in the grand scheme of things, where I'm banking that these could be 9.8s. But you'll also notice that it's not an automatic guarantee, especially from Midtown. You literally do not know what's going to happen with these books. It is a big gamble, but sometimes, again, if I've got 3 out of 4 here that are 9.8s on Spider-Man 7, then I am in pretty good shape here, where the gamble paid off, where it's kind of simple math. If I were to send all 4 books of these in and I did hit the 9.8, I could probably sell one of those slabs and pay for this whole order. That's kind of my logic and my thinking with this. But as you could see with the Void Rivals books, where the bottom each had a significant, I'm just calling them finger bends because it does look like fingers or thumbs were pressing on the bottom of the books. It just happened to be kind of wavy or in succession there, which was kind of weird. But anyway, I don't know if these were damaged from the distributor to Midtown, or Midtown damaged them putting them all in the bag and boards so rapidly and they just don't care about the books or the condition. I have no idea. But it's a good example of kind of the risk you take when you're buying from Midtown. You could get books that are 9.8 candidates, and you could have brand new books that should be 9.8 candidates, especially with that Image Skybound kind of paper. Like it lends itself to being in better shape, whereas the Marvel books, the paper is so thin. But it ended up kind of the opposite, where the Marvel books are 9.6, 9.8 candidates, and the Image books, I think cover B is it's probably a 9.6 to be fair, and the other cover A's are all 9.2s. So that's just kind of the way it works out. Let me show you what I paid for these, compare the cost of these books to fair market value, and let's check to see if there are any graded values if I were to send any of these books off for professional grading. All right, here is the order that I placed with Midtown Comics on July 27th, 2023. The total cost for the entire order was $107.31. I did unlock free shipping. Free shipping at Midtown is $75 or more. I did have to pay tax as indicated here, which then adds the additional amount here to column L, which is the actual price that I paid for the book. So you could see that I ended up paying a little over $20 for each copy of Spider-Man number 7, and then I paid a little over cover price. Cover price for Void Rivals is $3.99. Midtown had them listed at $4.50, so it ended up being $4.93 after tax for each book. And then what I do here is I take a look at the total cost here in column Z and compare it to the current fair market value as provided by cover price. So right off the bat, hopefully you can see this. I've got the cover price fair market value as $30 currently for Spider-Boy. So for as much hype and as much talk, and he's a polarizing character right now. I always have my theories on characters like this, because it's like, do you really care or dislike a character, or is it really about whether or not you have the book? So of course, now with a total of 5 copies in my collection, I love Spider-Boy. He's my favorite character. But it's just, I never really quite understand specifically the love-hate with characters or books or titles. There's a lot of comics that I love that I don't own, and there's a lot of comics that I do own that I don't like. And I always find that humorous, where I'd rather people be transparent instead of try and really push a character that they know nothing about. But hey, I was able to, get a tip and pre-ordered a short box full of these things. Like, I don't know how it works. But anyway, it's $30 nonetheless. I was just saying that for as much hype and as much talk, why isn't this book $50 or $100? I mean, there's some people that are reaching saying that the hype on this character should be as high as Miles Morales, and Morales has video games and movies and comics, multiple series, and he participated in events and time travels and all kinds of stuff. And Spider-Boy's brand new, but some people are already reaching and saying that he's going to have the same popularity trajectory or comic book value trajectory that Miles Morales has, and I don't see it happening. So maybe $30 is fair for a book that just came out not too long ago. I don't know, but I would say maybe 40, 45 is kind of what I was expecting it to be. But regardless, I ended up buying these for 20 because I saw the rare fair market value on these at 30 and figured, okay, already I'm kind of ahead of the game since I found them there. And even Void Rivals, cover price, fair market value on those guys, it's $6 a piece. So from a raw value add perspective, I added $36.69 of value to my collection just by purchasing these books raw. Now, what's always interesting to me is I'm looking for, potential long-term value and investment in my collection. And so in this case, what I want to see is if any of these books have any value, if they were professionally graded. So now, just out of curiosity, I just want to see if any of these books have value in a 9.4. No surprise Spider-Man 7 does, but what is surprising is in a 9.4, the CGC fair market value is $54. Now that's telling me a couple of things. Number one, the book has value just because it's a brand new book, and a brand new book typically in a 9.4 is worthless, slabbed. You're better off keeping it raw. The second thing this is telling me, other than the fact that it has value in a 9.4 and will most likely have it obviously in a 9.8, is that there were enough of these sent in where some of these books came back 9.4, they sold and people are buying them. That's crazy for a brand new book that there's actual data and evidence of this book having value. This is kind of where the risk reward and that cutoff price that I was talking about earlier comes into play. So if I were to spend $20 and I were to get the book professionally graded and they came back 9.4, like my grading skills stink and I was just wrong, could I move on from these books if I were to buy them for over cover? And in this case, yeah, it probably costs around $55 for me to get these graded. And if I just whiffed completely, I could put them back into the market and recoup my costs and it would be a wash. All I would have had to spend is just a little bit of time and energy. But from a cost perspective, you could see just a loss of 59 cents. Now, fortunately for me, I think, like I said, 3 out of the 4 books are 9.8s. And unfortunately, the Void Rivals are not. But I did want to show you the values of these books if they were to get a 9.8, just so I could show you what I was targeting or trying for at least. And you can see here, over $100 for this book in a 9.8. Today's market, that is not as common as it used to be. A couple of years ago, you could buy a brand new book, and if you pick the right ones, you could send them for CGC and turn them into $100. It's not the case now. It takes a book like this that has a lot of attention, both positive and negative, to push I don't know if you classify this as a modern book. It's a brand new book. It's a new release to push it over $100. And it's an open order. It's not an incentive. So right here, this is why I made the purchase, because in a worst case, it's 9.4. I get my money back. Best case scenario, 9.8s. And if the entire order cost me $107.31 and I were to sell 1, maybe 2 of those, now I've got the entire order covered and some of my CGC fees also covered. Void Rivals, cover A number 1, also doing well at $71.50. Really not bad. If I were to place another order with Midtown, I'd probably add a couple more copies of Void Rivals cover A. I think especially with Kirkman behind the story, it'll have some interesting tie-in to maybe the greater universe that now Image has control over. And I'm curious to see where this goes. Cover B, though, unfortunately has no value at a 9.8. That's why I only picked up one copy, but had missed out on Void Rivals completely. And now nice to go back and get cover A and B and now have that secured in my collection. So kind of going back to my previous point around books that are hard to find. I've talked about this before where you can be patient and some books come back around, but I don't think these books really ever left. They were easy to find. Midtown will do this from time to time where they will jack up the price of a book because they're seeing maybe what it's going for on the secondary market. Maybe it's been out for a little bit, a month or two, and they'll say, we're going to boost the price of this just to make a few extra dollars off people. And that's what they did with me. They only paid whatever it was, the cost to get them originally. So selling them for $20, they're thinking that they're sort of tuning and adjusting their prices to fair market value. And there's arguments for and against that, and I don't really care to get into it. In my opinion, I'm glad they had it. I'm glad I was able to pick up 4 copies. It wasn't a limit 1 per customer. That was also odd. Typically, they'll do that. So sometimes when you're buying comic books, it feels like, oh man, am I really getting a deal here? I think because of the condition of the books and the values that you see, I did end up getting a deal. But then if you look at the Void Rivals books, buying 9092 copies off the shelf, those are cover price books. I didn't pay that much more, and it's really okay. It's just unfortunate that they were all damaged. I think what's interesting to me is just looking at scarcity, value, hype, availability. Yes, the basic laws and principles of supply and demand, but it's the hype and the manipulation of one or the other that I'm always trying to see if I can either figure out or stay ahead of. And I do find it interesting in these cases when there's a title or issue that is talked about and hyped very heavily, and then the books are readily available, easy to find. And I'm always happy to take advantage of those situations where instead of listening to somebody talk about a book and tell you to pay attention to it, or don't miss out, or you're sleeping, or whatever the latest speculator term is to influence you to buy the books that they already have, I like the data. And what the data showed me in this case is even for $20, forget about Spider-Man 7 or Spider-Boy in general, for a $20 investment, you have a good chance of getting the book in a condition where if you were to get it professionally graded and it comes back to you, you would have the potential to add somewhere between $45 and $55 of value per book, per slab into your collection. To add that, I'm all in. It doesn't matter to me as sort of a blind collector and without any sort of emotional attachment to anything. I'm already intrigued by that. And sometimes I have to lag out a little bit and be a little behind the curve like I did with this one. So instead of buying it for cover price and adding $65 of value to my collection, I have to wait, buy it for $20 and only add $50. It's still not bad. You're kind of waiting for a sure thing, and it's better than buying 3 to 5 copies of every new release and crossing your fingers thinking that there's going to be more hits than misses on any given new comic book day week. And sometimes you just have to kind of ignore the noise and wait it out. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you think I did well with this order. I think from a numbers perspective, it looks pretty good. If I can get those Void Rivals books pressed into a 9.8, I would have had the potential to add almost $300 of value to my collection if I were to send them in for professional grading. So I think I did pretty well. And if you like what I do here, please consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button under this video or going to my YouTube channel page at Moneyball Comics, and you can check out my membership page there where you can be eligible to participate in my monthly giveaways. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.